You're nothing but a gold-digging bitch. That's what my brother-in-law Jake snarled before his palm cracked across my face in front of the entire family. The sound of skin hitting skin echoed through the dining room like a gunshot. One moment I was standing there defending myself against Jake's cruel remarks, the next I was clutching my stinging cheek while the entire family watched in stunned silence. But the physical pain was nothing compared to what came next. I turned to my husband Daniel, my eyes pleading for him to say something, do something, anything to show he still loved me. Instead he looked away and muttered, "You shouldn't have provoked him." In that moment, something inside me broke. Not just from the slap, but from realizing the man I'd built a life with would rather protect his brother's fragile ego than stand up for his own wife. Little did they know, their betrayal would cost them far more than they ever imagined. It was supposed to be a celebration, Daniel's parents' 30th wedding anniversary. The kind of fancy family gathering where everyone wears their best fake smiles and pretends to get along. I should have known something was off when Jake arrived already half drunk, his expensive suit wrinkled and his eyes scanning the room like a predator looking for prey. Jake had always treated me like an unwanted guest in his family. As Daniel's older brother and the golden child who took over their father's business, he made sure I never forgot my place, or rather, the place he thought I belonged. The insults started subtly at first. "That's an interesting dress, Mia," he said, his eyes raking over my outfit with obvious disdain. "Did Daniel pay for it, or did you finally get a real job?" I forced a laugh, trying to keep the peace like always. But with each glass of wine, Jake's jabs grew sharper until finally, he crossed the line no one could ignore. "Seriously, Daniel," Jake slurred, sloshing wine onto the white tablecloth. "When are you going to trade up? I've got at least 3 secretaries who would treat you better than this gold digging." I didn't even think. The words flew out of my mouth before I could stop them. "At least I earn my keep. What's your excuse besides daddy's money and bullying anyone weaker than you?" The room went deathly quiet. Even the clinking of silverware stopped. Jake's face turned an alarming shade of purple. For a second I thought he might actually have a stroke. Then he was out of his seat, towering over me with a look of pure hatred. That's when his hand connected with my face. The sting brought tears to my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not in front of him. Not in front of any of them. What hurt more than the slap was looking around the table and seeing Daniel's mother covering her mouth in shock, his father staring at his plate, and Daniel just sitting there like nothing had happened. I waited. 1 second. 2. Surely my husband would say something. Do something. Instead he took a long sip of wine and said, "Come on Mia, you know how Jake gets. You shouldn't have provoked him." That's when I knew, this marriage was over. I left without another word. No dramatic scene, no thrown dishes. Just me walking out with my head held high while my cheeks still burned from Jake's slap and my heart ached from Daniel's betrayal. The car ride home was silent. Daniel kept glancing at me like he expected me to apologize. Like I was the one who'd done something wrong. That night, as he snored beside me, I made a decision. If no one was going to stand up for me, I would stand up for myself. And I knew exactly where to start. While Daniel slept, I went through his phone. I'd never invaded his privacy before, but after tonight, all bets were off. What I found changed everything. Hidden among mundane work emails were messages that made my blood run cold. Jake wasn't just an asshole, he was a criminal. And Daniel wasn't just enabling him, he was participating. The texts detailed years of financial fraud, embezzlement from their father's company, and something even more shocking, Daniel's affair with Jake's personal assistant. I read the messages 3 times just to be sure. Each word cut deeper than Jake's slap ever could. "Jake, the auditors are coming next week. We need to move the money." "Daniel, I'll handle it. Just keep your mouth shut about Sarah." Sarah. That was her name. The woman my husband had been sleeping with while I worked overtime to pay our bills. I should have been devastated. I should have cried. Instead, I felt something far more dangerous, clarity. The next morning, I called Jake. "You have until noon to meet me at the coffee shop on 5th, I said before hanging up. He arrived looking smug, like he expected me to apologize. Instead, I slid a folder across the table. His smirk disappeared when he saw the contents, printed copies of every incriminating text, every suspicious transaction, every dirty secret. "You're bluffing," he said, but his hands were shaking. "Try me," I replied. "Either you sign this confession admitting to the embezzlement, or I take all of this to the FBI. Your choice." For the first time since I'd known him, Jake looked afraid. It took 2 hours of threats and negotiations, but eventually, Jake signed. The document detailed every illegal transaction, every lie, every cent he'd stolen from the family business. With his signature, I held his freedom in my hands. Now it was Daniel's turn. Daniel came home to find divorce papers waiting on the kitchen counter. "You're overreacting," he said, laughing nervously. "It was just a slap. Jake didn't mean it." I didn't argue. I simply played the recording of Jake confessing to everything, the fraud, the stolen money, even Daniel's affair. The color drained from Daniel's face. "You recorded him?" I smiled for the first time in days. "Sign the papers, Daniel. Or I take everything public." Within a week, Daniel signed the divorce settlement giving me half of everything. Jake resigned from the family business, claiming he wanted to pursue other opportunities. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I just felt tired. As I packed the last of my things, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. The message made my blood run cold. "We need to talk. It's about what really happened that night. Sarah." Suddenly, I realized, the game wasn't over yet. I stared at Sarah's text, my fingers frozen over my phone screen. "We need to talk. It's about what really happened that night." What could Daniel's mistress possibly have to say to me? An apology? A threat? I almost deleted it. Almost. But something in those words made my stomach twist. What really happened that night? Not what happened. What really happened? So against my better judgment, I replied. "Meet me at the grind. Noon. Come alone." Little did I know, this conversation would flip my entire world upside down. Sarah wasn't what I expected. No flashy designer clothes. No smug smile. Just a tired-looking woman in jeans and a sweater, her hands shaking around her coffee cup. She didn't waste time. "I'm not who you think I am," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never slept with Daniel." I nearly laughed. Right. And I suppose all those texts were about the weather. Sarah pushed a manila envelope across the table. "Jake made me send those. He's been blackmailing me for months." Inside were photos, private, compromising photos of Sarah with another man. A married executive at Jake's firm. "Jake found out," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "He threatened to send these to my parents, to the board members. Said he'd ruin me unless I helped set Daniel up." My coffee turned to acid in my stomach. Set him up for what? Sarah looked me dead in the eyes. To take the fall for the missing money. All of it. The pieces started clicking together in horrifying clarity. Jake hadn't just been stealing from the company, he'd been framing Daniel for it. The affair texts? Fabricated to give Jake leverage over his brother. And that slap at dinner? A test, Sarah said. Jake wanted to see if Daniel would choose him over you. If he could still control him. I sat back, my mind reeling. All this time, I thought Daniel had betrayed me. But the truth was far worse. He'd been sacrificing himself to protect me from Jake's wrath. And I'd walked out on him when he needed me most. I found Daniel at our old apartment, surrounded by half-packed boxes. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. When he saw me, his face went pale. "Mia, I can explain." "Try," I said, throwing Sarah's envelope on the table. What came next was a confession that shattered everything I thought I knew. Daniel had discovered Jake's embezzlement 6 months ago. When he confronted him, Jake threatened to ruin the woman he loved if he talked. "So I played along," Daniel said, his voice raw. "Let everyone think I was cheating. Let you hate me. It was the only way to keep Jake from destroying you while I gathered evidence." My knees gave out. All those nights I'd cried myself to sleep, all the rage I'd felt, it had all been part of Daniel's desperate plan to protect me. Just as Daniel finished speaking, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. A photo attachment. My blood turned to ice. It was a picture of my little sister, tied to a chair in what looked like a warehouse. Then came the text. "Tell your husband to back off. Or she's dead. Jay." Daniel grabbed my shaking hands. "What is it? What's wrong?" When I showed him, his face went deadly calm. "Call Sarah. Now." Sarah arrived in minutes, took one look at the photo, and went sheet white. "It's the old shipping warehouse," she whispered. "Jake's been using it to," she choked on the words, "to store documents. And other things." Daniel was already grabbing his keys. "We're going. Now." As we sped through the city, Sarah dropped the final bombshell. "Jake never planned to let either of you walk away," she said. "The embezzlement was just the start. He's been funneling money to." A gunshot rang out. Our car swerved violently as the rear window shattered. I screamed as Daniel slammed the brakes. Behind us, a black SUV screeched to a halt. And standing in the middle of the road, holding a smoking pistol, was Jake. Did you really think, he called, I'd let any of you leave alive? The moment Jake's gun fired, time slowed. Daniel shoved me down just as the bullet shattered the driver's side window. Glass rained over us as the car swerved, tires screeching against asphalt. Sarah screamed, clutching the dashboard. Jake wasn't just angry, he was desperate. And desperate men do reckless things. But I wasn't the same woman who took that slap at dinner anymore. We lost Jake in the chaos, but we knew where he was headed, the shipping warehouse where my sister was being held. Daniel called 911 as we drove, his voice steady despite the blood trickling from a glass cut on his temple. Stay in the car when we get there, he ordered. I didn't argue. Not because I was scared, but because I had a plan. The warehouse loomed ahead, its rusted gates half open. Police sirens wailed in the distance, but they wouldn't get here fast enough. Sarah gripped my arm. Jake has security cameras everywhere. He'll see us coming. I pulled out my phone. Then we give him a show. I dialed Jake's number. He answered on the first ring, his voice eerily calm. Mia. I wondered when you'd call. Let my sister go, I said, keeping my voice shaky on purpose. Please. I'll do whatever you want. A pause. Then a laugh. You and Daniel come inside. Unarmed. Or I put a bullet in her. I looked at Daniel. He nodded. Fine, I whispered. We're coming. I hung up and handed Sarah my phone. The police are 5 minutes out. Send them in the second you hear shouting. Daniel frowned. What are you? I reached under my seat and pulled out the tire iron. I'm not hiding in the car. The warehouse was dim, the air thick with dust and the sharp scent of motor oil. My sister sat tied to a chair in the center, her eyes wide with terror. Jake stood behind her, gun pressed to her temple. Took you long enough, he sneered. Daniel stepped forward, hands raised. It's over, Jake. The police have all the evidence, the embezzlement, the fraud, the threats. Running won't save you now. Jake's grip tightened on the gun. Then I might as well make this worth it. That's when I moved. I didn't charge at him. I didn't scream. I just clicked my phone screen, and the warehouse echoed with the sound of police sirens. Jake's head snapped toward the noise. It was all the distraction Daniel needed. He lunged, tackling Jake to the ground as the gun clattered across the concrete. I sprinted to my sister, yanking at the ropes binding her wrists. Outside, real sirens wailed. Jake fought like a wild animal, but the police dragged him away in cuffs, his threats fading into the night. My sister sobbed into my shoulder as paramedics checked her over. Daniel sat slumped against an ambulance, his hand shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Sarah handed me my phone back, her face pale. You bluffed him with a siren sound effect? I managed a weak laugh. Desperate times. The next few days were a blur of police statements and lawyers. Jake's crimes went far beyond embezzlement, blackmail, fraud, even ties to a corporate espionage ring. The scandal rocked the family business, but the board voted unanimously to remove him permanently. Daniel was cleared of all wrongdoing. The texts with Sarah? Fabricated under Jake's orders. The missing money? All traced back to Jake's offshore accounts. And as for us? Daniel and I sat on the balcony of our still shared apartment, the city lights twinkling below. I should have told you the truth from the start, he said quietly. I sipped my coffee. Yeah, you should have. A pause. Then, can we fix this? I looked at him, really looked at him. The man who'd let me hate him to keep me safe. The man who'd charged into a warehouse unarmed for my family. Maybe, I said finally. But no more secrets. Ever. He nodded. Ever. 3 weeks later, as we packed up Jake's office, Sarah handed me a file. You should see this. Inside were divorce papers, Jake's from a year ago. His wife had left him after discovering his affairs. But that wasn't the shocking part. The beneficiary on his life insurance policy? Daniel. He was going to kill you, Sarah whispered. And make it look like an accident. I stared at the papers, my blood running cold. Jake hadn't just wanted to ruin us. He'd wanted to erase us. Jake is serving 12 years in prison. Daniel and I are in therapy. It's slow going, but we're trying. And that tire iron? It's now mounted on our bedroom wall, a reminder that sometimes, the quietest women are the most dangerous.